Five, four, three, two, one.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Eskin. On behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, it's my privilege to invite you to episode 57 in our nonprofit webinar series. The title of this segment is something I think we all need to do, and that's motivating donors to increase gifts. I'm going to give him a longer introduction in a second, but I am so pleased to have one of the sagest voices in fundraising to be our special guest, Ben Case, who's CEO and senior consultant with Focused on Fundraising. And I'm going to give him a little more of an introduction in a moment, but let me just thank you again for joining our learning community. And also thank you for the leadership that you have provided. So many consultants, so many professionals, so many volunteers. I got to ask you, first will be a tough question. Well, wait a minute. No, are you in Charlotte now? No, are you in Charlotte now or Emerald Island?
I'm just outside of Charlotte now.
How's the weather?
It's beautiful, 80, 85 degrees, beautiful. North Carolina weather is always beautiful.
How's the Case family doing?
Case family is doing exceptionally well. We're all healthy, no problems for the last 18 months, and everybody's doing really well.
That's great. I'd like to bring on our producer, Michael Largent, who's with Game Day Media. And he's going to explain there are two ways for you to share questions and comments. One is to type them in the chat space, but we really want to see what you look like because you probably look better than us and you'll join us on camera. In fact, we're going to do something fun very early. So Michael, could you explain how people can share their questions and comments? And by the way, Ben and I have talked, and the audience comes first. We have a lot of questions, but anytime you want to come into the discussion, we'll let you come in, okay? But Michael?
Yeah, so there's, like Jim said, there's two ways. If you want, you can type your questions into the chat space and then I'll read them out later. But what we really prefer, like Jim was saying, is if you can come on camera and turn on your microphone, we'd like to get your questions that way whenever you have them. So, yeah, those are your two options.
Um, I need to do something I haven't done before, Ben. You're an experiment. I'm not going to test you, the audience, on fundraising IQ. This is on something that's very important to me, entertainment trivia. And my question is that either you type it in the chat space, better yet, come on camera. I am looking for the name of a TV show that ABC aired in the mid 1970s. It starred Lee Majors as a astronaut that was rebuilt with bionic parts and it made him like super strong and everything. Can someone either type in the name of that show, better yet, come on camera and give us the name of that show?
Stephanie got it right. She got it right away on typing it in.
Stephanie, congratulations. And I remember when $6 million used to mean a lot. I would like to take I'd like to ask our guest, Ben Kay, CEO and senior consultant with Focused on Fundraising, a company I believe he started in 2001. He, during his career, has helped nonprofits raise 6 billion. He's not the $6 million man. He's the $6 billion man. Can you tell us just briefly about the Focus on Fundraising approach that gives such superpowers to nonprofits?
Sure. We really focus on the focus of what we do. The center of what we do is major gifts. We believe one of our principles that we advance, Joel, we were talking about principles. One of the principles we advance is that nonprofits that want to maximize their fundraising emphasize major giving. So that's what we do as the center of our work. And then because we do that, we also do strategic planning with nonprofits to help them think about where they're going and what they're going to do with the major gifts that they raise, because it's important for major donors to make sure there's a good strategic plan in place. We do a lot of communications work, some communications work, but really it's major giving. We do coaching and mentoring for individual fundraisers, managers, and leaders. We do campaign and fundraising counsel for nonprofits that we provide. And we have over 50 presentations under title. So we do a lot of presenting to help nonprofits think about what they need to do and understand what they need to do to be really highly successful.
Ben, I got a lot of questions ready for you and how to motivate donors to increase their gifts. And we're going to take questions from the audience. But I couldn't let this moment go by without asking you, I would call 3 macro questions. Number one, from someone like you who has a long distance lens on this industry, what do you think we learned about philanthropy last year in 2020?
Well, we learned a lot. I think most, Jim, of what we learned was reinforcement of what we already knew, deeply reinforced because of the dramatic year that we had, the dramatic times that we had. There were a few lessons, but mostly it was relearned and reinforced some good information. You talk about our resources, we spent a lot of time in the tips for highly successful fundraisers that we publish, talking about the things that you should be knowing. And for your listeners who don't receive our tip, let me encourage you to go to focusedonfundraising.com/resources to sign up for tips for highly successful fundraisers. And I'm going to mention some different resources, I'm sure, as we go. And if you want to contact me directly, you can reach me at ben@focusedonfundraising.com for anything that I talk about. We're happy to do that. I think for the most part, Jim, we learned that nonprofits are amazingly resilient. I think we're wonderfully flexible. I truly think that we were really focused on helping everyone in our society survive what we went through. And I believe that through all of COVID, fundraising and the nonprofit world was really a bright spot for what we do. Some clients that we had the best year they ever had in 2020. Some of them are repeating it in 2021. I think we learned that relationships and mission matter. Relationships really matter. Nonprofits that I work with, the people closest to the nonprofit, had a huge impact. So we need to make sure that we've got programs and approach that really nurture and grow relationships. That what we do in our training and coaching and mentoring of our individual fundraisers that we work with. And then we have to know our mission well enough and be strong in our mission well enough to live it even in the tough times that we went through. So be able to interpret our mission regardless of the circumstances was really a telling factor for a lot of the nonprofits that we work with.
You know, Ben, you and I didn't just go to a lot of conferences. We taught a lot of conferences as recently as 2.5 years ago, that if you wanted to ask for a gift, particularly a major gift, I realize definitions of a major gift vary from nonprofit. Well, let's just say $10,000 and up. Sure. You had to do that face to face. My other macro question, what do you think we learn works in virtual fundraising and what doesn't work?
Well, I think the first thing that we learned was that it can work. Because like you said, there are a lot of people that they just weren't doing it. We've been doing coaching and mentoring virtually for more than 8 years. We go all the way back to the early days of Skype. We've been working with fundraisers all around the US, all around the world. So we've been doing things virtually forever. So I think the first thing that we learned is that virtual fundraising can work. And the thing that I emphasize to people is to make sure that they use virtual fundraising for what it does well. It can.
Help me. What does it do well?
Well, I think it brings new scale to what we do. The nonprofits I work with who are local, who could be they could appeal statewide. There are organizations I work with that tend to be state oriented, and they could be national. So you could do anything that you wanted to around your scale. And we did that. We saw that work around events. We could decentralize, we could cut costs, we could do a lot of things using technology, and people were happy. People were very happy to be a part of it all. So I think it does scale exceptionally well. I think it allows it allows communication to be easy. Now,
Yeah.
the downside of that is that because it's easy, there's all kinds of options when it comes to the virtual. So I've got to make sure I've got a relationship and that I've got a reason for people to connect with me. Otherwise, they're just going to say no really easily. So um, it, it, it's easy, but by the same token, it really emphasizes, it makes us emphasize the relationship that we have to have with people, and we have to have a reason for them to be a part of what it is. I think another thing that virtual does exceptionally well and helps us do well is immediacy. If I've got to get with somebody, I don't have to plan a month ahead on how I'm going to travel to Illinois. I
Yeah.
can do that now.
Yeah.
And I mean, the phone did that, certainly email did that, but the face-to-face interaction really is different. There's a time I remember interviewing somebody, Jim, for a job that we had, and my associate was behind the camera taking notes, and I was looking at the screen. And at the end of the interview, my associate said, I'd hire that person right away. And I said, no way, because I was watching the person.
Ah,
And what I saw did not add up to somebody that I wanted to hire. I won't go into why. But the point is, it does immediacy, and it does, I wouldn't call it intimacy, but it does the face to face. It's not as good as being there. I agree with that, but it sure is better than the phone.
yeah. Yeah. Hey, I got to take advantage of you for one more macro question.
Sure.
What advice might you have for our attendees who might be considering either A, to be entering the nonprofit sector, or B, they're thinking this is a good time to consider moving up in the nonprofit arena?
Okay, well, that's a good question. And it's, for me, it's not hypothetical, not because I'm looking, because I'm not. I'm very happy with what I do. But uh, I get contacted by fundraisers all the time that are looking for help, and I'm not a headhunter. But the
Yeah.
advice I would give to people is, number one, if you are looking to change, there are jobs out there. I'm working with one fundraiser, and I contacted 3 nonprofits, and all 3 of them are hiring. All 3 of them wrote back and said, we're hiring. So there are jobs out there if you're looking for. Another fundraiser I work with found a very good opportunity I think it's a career opportunity for him to move forward. And I was really pleased about that. So there are opportunities out there. In terms of advice for people, whether you're looking to change or stay or move up, know your strengths, know what you do well, and know what brings you joy. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're in that stream that is both what you do well and what brings you joy. There's some things you do well that you don't enjoy. There's some things you enjoy that you may not necessarily do well or that aren't that important. But what's really where you really want to be and what you really want to make sure you know is what are your strengths and what brings you joy. Think results. Frank knows this. The 3 things that matter in fundraising: results, results, and results. And
Yeah.
that's it. And I want to know that you care about results. I want to know how you get results through the relationships you have, through the great team that you have. I want to know that, but there are 3 things that matter: results. So don't just think roles and responsibilities. Think about the results that you generate. Do your job exceptionally well. I don't care whether you're looking for the job or not looking for the job. Do your job exceptionally well. That's really important. And one of the things that I find rarer in the younger generations right now is a willingness to step forward and do more than your current job. Look for opportunities that will grow revenue and that have an impact strategically on your organization and are within your capabilities, and step forward and volunteer and be a part of any effort that helps to grow revenue and move forward the strategic priorities for your organization. And that will help your career move forward, whether you're staying with the team that you're with or looking to join another one.
Great advice. Ben and I have talked about 3 learning objectives today. Number 1, we're going to talk about how to engage, cultivate, involve our donors. We're going to then talk about evaluating their giving potential. And then finally, I love the emphasis that Ben puts on, you got to ask for and get gifts at a stretch but realistic level. but you're always asking for a specific amount for a specific purpose. And pardon me, I'm going to jump through a lot of questions. We're going to get to Ben's focus Q&A in a moment. By the way, Ben, as a little point of background, I want to thank you. This show is fully subscribed, and I know a big part of it is the people who want to hear Ben Case. I wish I would say it was part they want to hear Ben and Jim. They want to hear Ben. And our learning community audience is made up of executive directors, CEOs, directors of development. We have lots of board chairs, board members, volunteers, donors. So we like to say we have a very mixed learning community. And I know you've been providing leadership to the nonprofit sector for 41 years. And what we love, nonprofits bring out the best in all of us. We can be different in many ways. And they also remind us a very fundamental question, that one person make a difference? You bet they can make a difference. Did they make a difference in 2020? You bet they made a difference. I think Joel was asking about the difference between big and smaller nonprofits. They all harness this similar magical ingredient. You know, we talked about Lee Majors and the $6 billion man. Well, I think everybody involved in a nonprofit has $6 billion worth of passion. It's amazing what passion for your cause will achieve. And we want to thank you for your service, commitment, and leadership, because I don't care what nonprofit sector you're in, you're part of touching, improving, and saving lives. And again, we are so glad. Ben and I have been working on the scheduling this for a little while. But Ben, we almost do these every Wednesday. Sometimes we skip a week. We're going to have a fun topic next Wednesday. We're going to discuss disgruntled donors. I always felt, you know, donors are like families. Emotions can run both ways. And we as professionals and volunteers know how to handle that. We want to make sure you're on our mailing list. You will receive our monthly newsletter. And what we'll be doing, by the way, we'll be sending a very short summary of this to everyone and posting it on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then we give Michael Largent, I say, about 75 minutes to do his magic spin cycle. For Ben, for Andrea and I, that's about 2 rounds of Zinfandel. And then we're going to post the recording and the slides and the wisdom on LinkedIn and Facebook. So you're going to get this in many ways. I think Ben's book has only sold like 27,000 more copies than mine, but I was glad to publish last year my first book, 10 Simple Fundraising Lessons. And Ben, one of the things we want to say, I mean, philanthropy has just done amazingly well. And the number one predictor of philanthropy, and nothing's a close second, is the stock market. And I don't know, there's been a hiccup in the last week or so, but we're close to records there. We have some totals in the fundraising effectiveness project taught us that fundraising was up 11% over last year. Giving USA, I think, comes out in June 15th, so we'll have some more official data. I'm amazed, Ben, by the explosion of donor advised funds. Fidelity alone reported grants of $9.1 billion. I mean, they have massive presence. And finally, by the way, Ben, we have a standing offer. Anytime that Mackenzie Scott wants to call in and say something, we will yield the floor, right, Ben? And we call her our Wonder Woman. Last year, she awarded $6 billion. And it was not just the quantity or that money, it was given unrestricted, it was given lump sum, all up front, and she focused very much on underserved communities such as African American, Hispanic, and Tribal American. And so we saw some new heroes. The Lilly School has already put out early projections for 21, 22, and they look upbeat. So Ben and I will tell you that everything we should tell you you're doing here, you should do more of it. And we're saying here, Ben, you talk about emphasizing a major gift strategy. Our mothers taught us to go fishing where the fish are biting. And
Yep.
don't get us wrong, we love foundation money, we love corporation money, but about 70% of the money comes from individuals. When you toss in bequests, which is individuals who have passed the earth, it gets more to like 80%. So your nonprofit strategy should emphasize individuals. And there are a lot of nonprofits, and Ben will tell us there's 1.5 million in the United States. Ben, there's 100,000 in Texas. There's 6,000 in San Antonio alone. And it's not easy being a donor because you're not choosing between the good and the bad. You're choosing between the good and the good. And we're going to dig in with Ben and how we can help your nonprofit stand out. I think Joel made a mention that there are small nonprofits. He's right on target. Of that 1.5 million nonprofits, 88% have budgets less than $500,000. I like to break the funding cycle into 4 distinct parts, identifying who we're going to ask, how we're going to forge a emotional and personal relationship. So 3, when we go to ask them, they'll be in a favorable position to say yes. And finally, stewardship is how we acknowledge and thank them because, and this is what we're going to talk about, Bid. We want to come around next year and ask them not just to give again, but to give more. And I mean, this is a game of asking, whether it's over a virtual screen or whether it's face to face, and thank the Lord that we can get back to face to face. We have a little mantra here, Ben, and it's called the 3 words nonprofit strong. We're going to go to Ben's Q&A in about 15 seconds, but at this point, I would like everybody to type in the 3 words nonprofit strong. Ben, what are we?
Nonprofit strong, baby.
That's right. Joel, what are we?
There you go.
Joel, what are we?
You typed it in.
Nonprofit strong.
That's great. And Frank, what are we?
Nonprofit strong.
Well, I'll tell you what, everyone gets an A+. As I said, anytime you have a question, feel free to butt in. Ben and I want to put the audience first. Ben will assure you, I got plenty of questions ready for him. But anytime you want some clarification or one of our questions pops another question, you can type it in the chat space, or Michael said you can raise your hand and we'll bring you on screen. Now, Ben, are you ready to go to our more formal Q&A?
Yes, sir. Let's go.
Okay. Start from square one. What
Okay.
is the number one reason donors increase their gifts to a nonprofit?
You want me to boil it all down to one word?
Wow.
Number one reason, all in one word. I think if you're asking me to boil it all down to one word, I would boil it down to trust. Be interested to know what your listeners think about that, but that's where I would go. I think trust is influenced by a number of factors. One of my favorite writers on this is a guy by the name of Adrian Sargent, and any of the people that are watching, if you haven't read his material, I encourage you to do so. I think trust really captures the fact that we honor our promises. It shows that our values align of our organization. It shows that we've made good judgments, just really important, and that we have accurate and timely communications. I think all of that wraps up into trust. Sargent actually puts more importance around the word loyalty.
Yeah.
I think of, and I'm not saying he's wrong, I just think of it in a different way, and that is that I think trust is a result of, it's an outgrowth of loyalty, and you achieve loyalty because donors trust you. So you have to have trust and loyalty. I think both of those come out of, first, a satisfaction with the organization, with the services that you offer, and with the satisfaction of how you interact with your donors. I think trust and loyalty comes out of identification. In other words, people that are living out your mission, people that are engaged in your mission. It's one reason why faith-based organizations and colleges and universities and healthcare organizations do so well, in fundraising is because people are so engaged, they so identify with the mission of the organization. And then I think commitment is just really important. Nonprofits have to show their commitment, not only to the donor, but to their mission, whether it's public service or policy organizations. People have to develop that trust and loyalty by seeing that they align with you. They're committed to what it is you're doing, and they have great satisfaction in seeing what you do. So if I had to boil it all down to one word, I'd boil it down to trust. But you can see, Jim, the number of factors, big factors that I think go into building that trust.
Ben, this question is inspired by, I can hear my late mother. I can hear her speaking in my mind. And
Yeah.
it's the flip side of that question. What is the number one reason that donors refuse to increase their gift to a nonprofit?
I think that one's easy. If I had to boil that one down to all one reason, it would be poor stewardship. I had one fundraiser who helps, raise billions of dollars say that the least used, the most poorly used tool that we have is stewardship. So stewardship, bad stewardship, poor stewardship, and that boils down to there are a whole lot of components where that shows up. We don't use the funds well, or we don't communicate how we're using our funds. We don't talk about impact. We don't thank our donors, or we don't thank them enough where they actually hear the thank you. Some believe that you have to thank somebody 7 times for them to hear you. So, there was one nonprofit I worked with that had a very effective process for stewardship. It had on one axis, on one page, the different size of gifts. And then on the other axis, it had all the different things that we can do, all the different activities that we did for stewardship. So when someone gave a gift at any one of those points on that axis, we knew exactly what we were doing to practice good stewardship for that person. And we did that day in, day out. We made sure we were doing those things to thank our people, and to make sure we were showing good stewardship and communicating with them effectively around that.
Ben, I'm sure this question is in the head of a lot of the members of our learning community. How do you know the time is right to ask for a larger gift?
Well, when it comes to asking for a larger gift, I think you've got to think about 2 components here, Jim, and let me make sure that I get clarity around this. You've got to think about capacity, obviously. Do they have the capacity to give a larger gift? And there's another component in that I think is important. But then you also have to think about their commitment to give a larger gift. So they may be at capacity based on their commitment, but not on their financial capacity. And so I can't impact their financial capacity to make a gift. I can impact their commitment, their emotional commitment, their intellectual commitment.
I think that's a huge point. Could you repeat that, please?
Okay, I can't impact, I've got to have both. I can question both financial capacity and then the commitment to the nonprofit itself for them to make a larger gift. And if they don't have financial capacity, it's not going to happen no matter what I do. If they don't have the commitment to the organization, there are things that I can do to impact that. So I want to work on impacting their commitment to the nonprofit. And there are things that I can be doing to impact their commitment. And those elements become ways that we can tell if they're ready to think about an increased gift. Okay, so I like to ask questions. There's an old mantra in fundraising. If you want money, ask someone for their opinion. If you want opinions, ask somebody for their money. So I like to ask people for their opinions, their thoughts. So I want to be surveying. I want to be asking questions. People hear survey and they immediately think I'm doing something online or by phone, but I can do it in person. I can do it in any of those ways. The name of the game here is to have a dialogue with your nonprofit about the mission of the nonprofit, what you're doing, how you're serving, your impact, even your fundraising. You can have dialogues around all those things. And when people are answering those questions, they're responding to your surveys. They're a part of what you're doing, and that's a great commitment increaser. And it also is an indicator of a willingness to increase their gift. So let's be seeking their advice. Let's be giving them opportunities to involve and invite friends and family into what it is we do. Let's ask them to extend themselves to people they know to be a part of what we're doing. And when we do that, that's a great indicator of commitment. Let's be inviting them to events, online or in person. Great way to have engagement of people, and it's a good indicator of a willingness to increase their commitment they're giving to the nonprofit. Let's engage them with our VIPs. There's some nonprofits I know that are on this call that do a great job at engaging their donors, their prospects around VIPs, and that's a great indicator of their commitment too. So the thing that I want to do, Jim, is to make sure that I'm doing the right things to engage people. It's the identification, cultivation, solicitation, stewardship that you had up on the screen earlier. This is the cultivate people piece. I want to be engaging people, cultivating them so that they're willing to increase that commitment to us. Now, from the capacity side of things.
Yeah, because you were talking about commitment and capacity. Let's pretend we're one of those very small nonprofits that Joel Patelski was talking about.
Sure.
What are affordable ways they can kind of think about someone's capacity?
Well, the first way that I'm going to do it, and I advise every single nonprofit I meet with, is go meet with people.
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, if you're a small nonprofit, you're probably local, maybe not, but very often you are. You know who your better donors are. If you can't meet with them face to face, meet with them virtually, meet with them by phone, have an email exchange with them, get to know your donors. And then you find out, by doing that, you find out their capacity, you find out timing about when's a good time to be making an ask. You find out a lot of really important things, important elements when it comes to capacity. I mean, you know, there are so many free resources online to get some glimpses of people and their capacity. People can find out, you know, what's the value of the real estate that I own just by knowing where to go. So there are free resources that are online. Get to know the donors, get to know their peers, know what giving they do to other organizations. Sometimes when you're talking with them, you can get that information just directly from them. And then based on what you know, do they have greater capacity? And that's what I want to do. And a great way to find out capacity, Jim, ask. Not ask them their capacity, ask them for a gift. Ask them for the increased gift. And, you know, we talked about trust being a key factor in getting an increased gift. Asking for the gift is a really important factor.
Joel was saying about the difference between a little and a large nonprofit. Let me tell you, I don't care you're for the smallest nonprofit or you're the largest nonprofit. The way that you get gifts is that you ask, right?
Right. Yeah. And so if you want a great indicator of capacity, ask somebody for $1,000. You're going to find out pretty quickly whether or not they can give you $1,000. And if they have to write $100 checks over a 10-month period, that tells you one thing. If they stroke the check for $1,000 right there and hand it to you, that tells you something else. So watch your behaviors.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's.
By the way, man, I don't worry too much about under asking. You know,
Yeah,
I don't take it too long, because I say if someone just wrote me $1,000 on the spot, I'm going to steward that person like they wrote a check for 100,000, and that's
Right.
what next ask will be somewhere in between.
That's exactly. I agree 100% with that. I worry. I don't worry about over asking or under asking. If I over ask, I can apologize and do so in a sincere way. If I under ask, I get to come back. And like you say, we steward them. We take care of our donors either way. So there are a lot of ways that we can find out about capacity. Let me mention one other thing on capacity, Jim, that people often overlook. And that's temporary versus permanent on capacity. There are some people I know who are highly invested in their business. They're highly invested. They got all their money tied up in one thing. Their capacity is limited right now because there's something temporary going on in their world. Their stock may be down. Their stock holdings may be down. We were talking about how the market's up right now. You know, 15 months ago, a lot of people thought they were poor, but you know, it was just a temporary thing. So in talking even about financial capacity, we've got to look at it as, is this real? Is this permanent? Is there fixed state, or is this temporary? And we got to make sure that we're listening and sensitive to that also.
Ben, our best future donors are the ones that we have right now. Can you talk about some of the proven ways that we can thank, acknowledge, and steward our donors, and so they will give again and they will give more?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I think one of the things that I like to do in thanking our donors and stewarding them is the Donor Recognition Society. You and I think, align in terms of the importance of Donor Recognition Society, recognition tiers, donor clubs, naming opportunities, all of those types of things. I think all of those are important. So if I have a Donor Recognition Society, for instance, I want to make sure that I use it to ask people for increased gifts, to recognize our donors, to communicate with them, to make sure that we're regularly stewarding them, which you were just talking about. And donor recognition societies and naming opportunities and recognition tiers and all those things give us opportunities, I think, to regularly engage our donors. And I think that's really important, and it gives us a way to recognize them. And I think people like that. I start my donor recognition societies at $1,000.
Yeah.
I know a number of them start at 2,500. Some start at 1,000. I mean, 5,000. You can do it for less, and some do, and I think it's fine for 100 and on down the line. One nonprofit that I worked with, and this is a true story, had a donor recognition society that started at $1 million. Okay. All right. Don't get distracted by that.
Did you say $1 million?
Don't get distracted by that. Those of you with smaller nonprofits, the principle's the same here, folks. I'm advancing principles for, I don't care where you are in the nonprofit world. The principle here is the same. Okay. I'm having dinner with this donor. We have a donor recognition society. It starts at $1 million. It's in Texas, by the way, Jim. And
by the way, I hope they receive more than a mug.
Yeah, they get more than a mug. And we're at dinner, and I haven't even mentioned the amount that we're going to talk to this person, but I start describing the Donor Recognition Society at $1 million. And I'm talking about that. And I know that that is very important to this donor because I have a great relationship with this donor. I know this donor. I've gotten to know the donor. I know this is important. And the donor looks at me right in the eye and he says to me, and I quote, he says, "You just set the hook." Okay, which in fishing terms means that I just yanked on that line. I set that hook. I know that fish is going to come in. He just told me that that Donor Recognition Society was very important to him. Needless to say, he did the $1 million. He did numerous gifts at that level. He helped us recruit $1 million donors for that organization. Don't get distracted by the amount. The principle is the same. Talk about it.
Sorry, we get distracted by the amount.
Don't get distracted by the amount. The principle is what I'm driving home here. Have your Donor Recognition Society, talk about it, have benefits for it, manage it well, make sure that your donors know about it, use it as a way to encourage your donors to participate, use it as a way to encourage people to increase their gifts, so you have those different levels. And Donor Recognition Society is one of my favorite ways of engaging my donors and talking about good stewardship. It really matters.
Right. Hey, Ben, no easy questions. Let's just say Stephanie, thank you, Stephanie, has given us her first gift to our nonprofit. How quickly can we go back to her with our next solicitation?
The answer to that one is it depends. And Stephanie, I saw your question pop up in the chat bar. I'll make sure that we get to that one here sometime during this. How quickly can I go back to someone who's made a gift? I really think the right answer is it depends. The fact is it really revolves around your relationship with the donor. You want to make sure you first care about the relationship. I don't think there's a set rule on how soon I can go back, a hard and fast rule on how soon I can go back. I've talked with donors that have existing pledges and gone back to them. They haven't paid off the pledge yet. I've gone back to them for a gift for something else. Today, some of the fundraisers I'm coaching and mentoring, we were talking about number of donors that they have who are giving to a certain project, and there's a new, really exciting, cool project that we want to talk with them about, and we are going to. Even though they're paying off pledges, we're going to talk with them because we have something exciting to talk with them about.
Yeah.
So, my job, and this is a principle here, folks. My job is to present the nonprofit and our fundraising, what we're working for, what we're doing in an exciting, motivational, inspirational way. It's the donor's job to figure out whether or not they want to make a gift. So don't pretend you're the donor. Don't try to determine the timing yourself. Listen to the donor, care about the relationship with the donor, present your ideas, present the fundraising opportunities that you're doing in an exciting way, and give them the opportunity to say yes, to step up and say, that's a really cool idea. I want to increase my gift and do that.
Yeah.
Let me also mention, Jim, just real quick, one other thing is a part of the timing on that. I do like anniversary programs, and I do promote them where somebody gave their gift in June of last year and they haven't made a gift.
I love those. I love those.
Yep, the letter goes out, the phone call gets made, the visit happens. You made your gift in June of last year of X amount. We're asking you to consider a gift, whatever the increased amount is. So I really like anniversary programs, and I encourage all of us to make sure that we're looking at that for all of our donors.
Hey, Ben, I have only, I think, 74 more questions for you, but I want to give the audience an opportunity. Michael, is there anybody who has typed a question in the chat space, or better yet, we'd like to bring them on camera because we got about 19 minutes left here.
Yeah, Stephanie, it looks like you asked a question. If you want to turn on your mic and ask it, you can do that right now, or I can read it from the chat.
Let's have Stephanie state it. Stephanie, we're going to make you work. How's that?
So you were talking about the Donor Recognition Society. So how do we create that?
Great question. And that's actually one of our future questions. So Ben, she beat me to my punch, but
Sure.
That's a great question, Stephanie.
Okay. I can't tell you the number of donor recognition societies I've set up. I start with a list. There are a lot of things you start with. Okay, number one is your list of donors, because I want to set up my tiers for my donor recognition society that reaches to the top of my donor giving. So let's say I've got a donor whose top gift is $100,000. That's the maximum. I want to make sure my donor recognition society runs up to $100,000 to recognize that donor. And it reaches down to whatever level you want to start with. Okay, so that's one thing I'm going to look at is the donor list, the existing donor list that I have. The second thing I'm going to look at is what do I want to name this? Because I like to have a name that is not generic. Oh my gosh, I can't, the Giving Circles or, all the different generic names.
Heritage Society.
Yeah, Heritage Society for your planned giving organization. I mean, just, come up with a name and think about a name that is characteristic or unique for your nonprofit that helps you tell a story. Because that's one of the great things about a donor recognition society is that you want to use it to help you tell a story. One nonprofit I worked with was founded in 1842. They, everything that they did was around the 1842 number. And that made a lot of sense. Another organization, the biggest building on campus, had this cool tower that was a part of it. So the Tower Society was a part of this. And I mean, that can be generic, but it really helped them tell a story about their values, about who they are, about their heritage, about their history. So think about a name that helps you tell a story. You can even do giving levels that helps you tell a story. I was talking about the organization founded in 1842. Their monthly giving number was $18.42. That's how they approach their monthly giving. So I want to be making sure that I think about a donor recognition society that caps out my donors, that helps me tell a story that is unique to the organization as much as I can, that makes it unique. Then what I do is I put those ideas on paper and I run it by our leadership. Is this helpful? Does this sound right to you? I run it by some donors. I share it with them. I get input. Remember our principle, when you want money, ask people for opinion. When you want opinions, ask people for money. So let's be asking people's opinions. In doing that, you're going to help them set their sights. Stephanie, I hope that gives you a couple ideas to start with, to think about your donor recognition society and how to put it together. Jim, anything you want to add to that?
Oh, I really, but I want to get to another. We're going to give you no easy questions.
Okay.
Let's just say, let's talk about, moving the donor up the giving ladder. Joel's first gift to our nonprofit says $100. We do all the right stewardship. We take them up to $500. We take them up the next year to $1,000. We continue to recognize him, engage him, inform him, do all the right things. We bring him up to say $2,500. The question is, how do you know there's a maximum level for your donor?
Before I answer that, Jim, one thing that occurred to me on Stephanie's question, also put together the benefits for the different levels. That's one of the things you need to think about is what are we going to be doing benefit-wise? And to do that, you need to think about what benefits do your donor wants? What kind of recognition do they want? And I'm not talking about tchotchkes and, giveaway things, another keychain. I'm really talking about what kind of sincere, really truthfully benefits can we offer to people. So I want to mention that too. Okay, Jim, your question, how do we know that somebody's reached a capacity?
Yeah, we've taken Joel from 500 to 1,000 to 2,500. How do we know then, we're doing everything right? We have a lot of engagement. How do we know we've reached Joel's maximum giving level?
When Joel dies and leaves everything to your estate. Everything in his estate to your nonprofit. That's how you know it. That's how you know it. That's the only way you know it. That's the only way you know it. Or they tell you they've given everything to you and they make a commitment of that for their planned gift. I mean, no, seriously.
But seriously, rule of thumb is that usually people can give, 7 to 10 times more through their estate than they can through their wealth and income.
Yeah, it's a whole different level, and that's why, as a part of what we do, we work with nonprofits around their planned giving programs a lot. We do a lot of that work. Really, in terms of measuring capacity, I think it goes back again to asking, giving them exciting opportunities. They've given you 1,000. We're going to ask them for 2,500. They say yes. We're going to ask them for 5,000. They say yes. We know that we haven't capped out where we are yet. And I want to be doing that. I want to be reaching upward all the time. Let me mention another thing, Jim, that I do. And I know there's some people that don't like this. Okay. So I will acknowledge that there are some fundraisers that don't like this, but I like it. And it's called the range ask. Okay. And what I like to do is I'm going to ask somebody for $100,000. That's what I want them to give is $100,000. I will ask them for that. And matter of fact, today I was working with one fundraiser on doing this. They're going to ask this person for $100,000. I said, I'm going to say to the donor, here's what you can do for $250,000. And I'm going to lay out what the impact is from a gift of $250,000. And here's what happens at $500,000. I'm going to lay out an impact at $500,000. Okay. Now, the important thing here is that 100,000 is the ask.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't go down. All right. If 100,000 is is what you want to ask for, don't start negotiating down. All right. Oh, here's what you could do for 50. Here's what you can do for 25. You respond. If that's what they tell you, then okay, you respond, you talk about that. But you do the range ask by moving up. And it does a few things. Number one, it helps you solicit a donor where you're really not sure what their capacity is. You think 100,000 is the top, but you don't know. So you give them some options to move up. Number two, it helps to set future sights. So they may say yes to 100,000, but you've set sights to let them know that you also have opportunities at 250. You also have opportunities at $500,000. So you've moved up their sights, which is really important to do. And I like to be able to do that with my donors. So
what's your experience? How many bite at the higher level? What's your experience been on that?
Few.
Okay.
Immediately. But over the long term, I've seen it happen. Over the long term, especially over the long term, because you really discover that they do have that capacity. And believe me, if they say yes to 100,000, you just found out they probably have a capacity to do more. So my experience with the range ask, I've never offended anybody.
Yeah.
I've never felt like I did the wrong thing. But I do want to emphasize to your people. I do want to emphasize to your people.
Yeah.
The best ask is a specific amount, is for a specific amount. Don't mishear what I'm talking about, okay? The best ask is, will you give a gift of $100,000? That's the best ask, all right? Don't misinterpret it.
Again, I'm going to blame my mother on this, but we've talked about what you should do. If you're a nonprofit that wants to motivate a donor to give more, what are specific actions that you should avoid?
Well, obviously bad stewardship. I think you've got to make sure that you're not treating your donor as an ATM. Let's make sure that we're being thoughtful of that. And hey, Jim, let me mention one thing around this question, if I may, around good things and bad things to do. I've been invited to be on the faculty for the Institute for Charitable Giving, Jerry Panis's, the late Jerry Panis.
Let me tell people, that's the Oxford of the fundraising universe. There is no higher teaching honor. Congratulations.
Well, I've been invited to be on that panel and be on that faculty, and they have 3 seminars coming up in the fall, and you should go to Institute for Charitable Giving to register for that. They will all sell out. They're excellent. It's an excellent faculty. It's 3 days of fundraising, so you really get deep. You have opportunity to interact one-on-one with faculty members that are there. These are really good people. I think the locations are Tennessee, California, and Ohio, I think Cincinnati. So in relating to the question of what do you do and what you don't do, go to the Institute of Charitable Giving and you get some great answers for that, okay?
Okay, we're wrapping up in our last 10 minutes. I want to make sure I get this question in, then check on the audience. We call lapse donors. I forget, what was the short names?
Yeah, live bunts and side bunts.
Yeah, right. How about, what's your suggestion? Okay, someone gave us, let's pick on Joel. Joel, you like being picked on? He gave to us 3 years in a row, but we didn't catch him last year. Forget about COVID. Let's make this a non-COVID year, okay?
Okay.
He lapsed. What can be the strategy to recapture that lapsed donor?
I'm so glad you asked this, because again, this is something that I teach all the time, and it's just really important. Understand why. Okay, folks, I'm talking about principles here. Remember, I said I was going to do that. The principle, and you've read this in some of the great business books, first seek to understand, then to be understood. Okay, so let's first seek to understand, why did this donor lapse? Now, if we do that through surveys, if we do that through a phone call, non-threatening way, let's try to first understand why the donor lapsed. And I want to encourage all of you, anytime you have lapsed donors, to be surveying those folks to find out what's going on. If you need to call them, if you have a volunteer who knows the person and can talk to them about why did they lapse. And it can't be, why did you lapse? It's got to be seeking information. It can't be accusatory. It's got to be, help me understand. And a lot of times when I'm asking this question, I will lead with that. Help me understand our donor behavior. I noticed that you lapsed in terms of your giving to us. You gave 3 years in a row and then you missed last year. Is there a reason? Is there something that we did? Is there something we need to do better? Is there something we didn't do? Help me understand why you lapsed. And then I'm going to listen to them and I'm going to take that in. And then once I understand that, I'm going to make a decision on how do I want to move forward with a solicitation on this donor. But first seek to understand, then to be understood. All right. That's my lesson, my principle for that.
And by the way, we do have time maybe for one last audience question. Michael, do we have anything in the chat space? Better yet, someone come on screen and try to stump the stars.
I don't see any questions, but I think Marv had a comment that he wrote in earlier about donor recognition societies. If you want to come on screen and talk about that, Marv.
Okay, and in fact, that's one of our, Marv Roy is president of the Institute for Philanthropic Excellence. And he's finally in the time of year, he's in upstate New York, he's not shoveling snow. Marv, are you there?
Yeah, I'm actually in Savannah, Georgia today, so no snow down here. It's beautiful. My comment was just about the naming of societies and giving levels and things. And often it's nice to honor special people in the organizations by using their names, and it really personalizes. If you can't come up with something, if you don't have a tower and you don't have the obvious things as part of your organization, you certainly have people. And it's a nice way to kind of say thank you to them. And we've done that a few times with some of our partners as well.
I really like that idea. I think it's a great idea, Marv. And again, one of the things that we try to promote is really great principles of fundraising. And what you did just then, Marv, is really good. Let me mention a place, if I may, Jim, where people can go for great principles of fundraising. We just created, you're the first person to hear this too, Jim. We just created a major gifts IQ test.
Huh.
And I did this with
I'm excited to take it.
I did this with a guy by the name of Viken, who's a friend. He's a founder and president of MajorGifts.com. And we had a stellar review board. Viken served as editor. We had Jerry Lindsay from Panis and Lindsay, and we had Stuart Sullivan from Graham Pelton, and we had Alan Taylor at NC State. We had a stellar group of people review this. It's 25 true-false questions. All of your listeners can take this and learn principles of major giving by simply going to mgiq.org, mgiq.org, and they will find it, or they can type in Major Gift IQ test and they'll find it there. But it's really a very good program for people to understand principles, and I want to encourage them to do that.
Wow, sounds like a fantastic resource. And now I got to go to the 2-minute drill, but there are a few more subjects. You know, typically when you talk about getting people to increase and stretch their gifts, one of the ways is to give them more time, particularly campaigns.
Yep.
Can you talk about two things at once? Multi-year pledge periods and what a good commitment form should look like.
Commitment form should have name, address, all the information you need to know about them, the amount, obviously options on giving, how they want to pay it, how they want to make the gift, all those things. I always make sure, please, always make sure you have a box that says, please send me more information on planned gifts. Make sure that you have that, because you never know who's going to fill that out. So that's kind of the basics on commitment forms. I love multi-year pledges. Say it again.
What periods of time are you comfortable with?
Up to 5 years on a pledge. If people want to go longer than that, okay, I'm happy to talk about it. But I think the normal that I see is that into that 3 to 5 year range for pledges. I like it for annual fund. It takes the heat off. I can, get somebody to commit for 5 years to the annual fund. I can do stewardship. I can come back to them like we've talked about for the increased gift when there's a really exciting program that I want to talk with them about. It allows me to stay in contact with them, to give them information about progress that we're making. So I'm all for pledges. And they're primarily for obviously our most committed donors, but and any long-term project that we have, I think you got to allow people to do pledges, endowments, if you're raising endowment money, those types of things. But
hey,
I don't
Dan,
care size your nonprofit, do pledges.
I want to be sure to get you this question in.
Sure.
If we're talking about really a stretch gift, and probably, what's your suggestion on working with different generations of a family on their leadership gift?
We do a lot of this. And again, you're going to find some questions at the Major Gift IQ test for this. So we do a lot of this. Let me give you the quick answer. The quick answer is take direction from the donor. You really want to be taking direction from the donor or from the family on how they want to engage with you around this. Know who the power brokers are, know who the decision makers are, know the decision process. All of those things are true I do a lot of generational fundraising. Any organization that's dealing with people with wealth they're normally dealing with more than one generation, and sometimes they're dealing with spouses. So we've got to make sure that we understand the decision process, who the decider is, most likely, who's the power broker, and then take direction from the family on how they want to be solicited.
Ben, you've shared so much gold. If we were maybe to point to a few particular nuggets, number one, can you really thank a donor too much?
No.
And I heard, and you want to ask not just for money, but for their advice. Peers are
Yeah.
great folks to give guidance on potential.
Yeah.
And above all else,
Jim,
go ahead.
on the thanking of a donor, you can thank them wrongly. You need to know how a donor wants to be recognized, but I can't think of a single situation where I thank somebody too much. Okay, let them know your gratitude. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
And above all else, it starts at square A. Ask for a specific amount and for a specific purpose.
Yep.
And anything else from the audience? And as you said, I can go through slides very quickly, but we're coming to 5 o'clock here. And I want to thank Ben. You remind me of my friend Marv. If there's something about fundraising you don't know, I want to know what that is. Thank you for everything you've done. By the way, one of the things I emphasize, our goal here is friendships over relationships. I once heard a relationship is something you have until something better comes along. And I think that a friendship is proved by, you can go to Joel and ask him for 1,000 and go to 500 to 1,000 to 2,500, ask him at 5,000 and he says, no, I just can't do that. But your friendship and association with the nonprofit remains. And by the way, I'll ask you for one last trivia question, Ben. There is only one person who's ever both recited a poem in front of a presidential inauguration and then did it for the Super Bowl. Who was that?
I think it's probably on the screen.
Right, Amanda Gorman. And the name of her poem's The Hill We Climb. And I think that really captures where we are in the nonprofit sector. Finally, Ben, focus on fundraising has guarantees. Jim Eskin has guarantees. Your chances of getting the gift go way up when you ask. You got to ask, folks. I want to thank Michael Largent, our producer. Michael, you will be doing a little editing, and usually it's about 60 to 75 minutes that we are going to post on Facebook and LinkedIn, the recording of this. And Ben, it has been an absolute pleasure to work with you and partner with you, but I'm going to have, I'm in the business of asking. I'm going to ask to partner with you again. This has been such a productive and rich hour for our learning community. So congratulations on making the faculty for this fall. And you have really made this an incredibly rich learning hour for our audience of nonprofit leaders. So thank you and all the best to the Case family.
Totally appreciate it, Jim, and keep up your good work. It's really needed out there. Keep nonprofit strong, baby.
Okay, you got it. Okay, thank you, and thank you to our learning community. We'll see you next Wednesday and talk about disgruntled donors. I don't care, you can do everything right. I can assure you, you're going to have disgruntled donors and you're going to know how to deal with them. Michael, say 60 minutes or so. Are you